Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Timespent show with your host, this guy, with supporting actor this week, this big chunk of pressure-treated wood that was discarded and I have saved from the dumpster. So, I think my plan is to cut it into like equal size squares and then glue those squares together into kind of a bigger square, so you'll see. That's what you're here for. At least hopefully you'll stick around to see episode 8 of the Timespent show with your host, Sam Marks. So here I am again using my dad's 10-inch table saw from last week, and if you're wondering whose arms those are helping me out, that's my dad. He was kind enough to spot me while I cut this pressure-treated chunk of wood because it was really thick and it was hard to get through, and so he helped me make sure everything was straight when I was cutting. So shout out to my dad for providing support not only when I'm cutting wood, but also in many other aspects of my life. So here's the stack of the smaller chunks of wood that I have. Here they are, neatly assembled. And so I'm going to actually glue these in batches of 3 to make sure that all of them are glued as parallel and as straight as possible, considering that this is an old piece of pressure-treated wood that was left out in the elements, so there was a little bit of discrepancy between each chunk of wood. And if you just noticed, I nailed in scrap pieces of wood so that I could use those clamps to keep clamping. So if you're ever low on clamps and you need more clamps, try this method. It works out pretty well. 24 hours later. So here I am removing those makeshift clamps. Removing the tape from the backside, and then I'm going to move on to a new set of larger clamps. Unfortunately, the clamps from last week actually were kind of defective, so I got some new ones that actually worked and returned the ones that did not. 4 hours later. While I was picking up those new clamps, I also got some wood filler to fill in all of those cracks and notches and imperfections in the wood to make it as smooth as possible when I start painting. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm using that wood filler to scrape into all those cracks. 24 hours later. So here I am. I'm going to start sanding with the orbital sander. I'm going to move up in grit as I go along. It was mostly to get off all of the excess wood filler, but also to make the now plank of wood as smooth as possible. Moving on to the painting section, there's that first coat of gesso, letting it fully dry, sanding it with the orbital sander. Here comes that second coat. Yup, going to let it dry once more. And then the fun part of the painting. Well, it's all fun, but this is real fun. So I actually added 1 coat of just white acrylic just to make everything blend kind of well. And then I'm just having fun with brushstrokes, using the surface of this material as kind of a template for where I was going to apply the paint. And here comes the pour. And this week, again, I used acrylic latex mixed with water. And I actually added acrylic in there to get that purpley purp color. 24 hours later. As you can see, I taped the edges this time because I really liked the outside surface of this wood and I wanted to keep it as natural as possible. So here's me satisfyingly removing the tape. I left the sound in because, yeah. Almost done removing all that tape. Bam. Now moving on to the grid section. So it's a 2-point perspective grid, and that first vanishing point is in the left-hand bottom of the screen. Filling in all those lines connecting to that first vanishing point. Going to pause it once more. Now it's in the upper left-hand corner of the screen is that second vanishing point. Filling in all those lines for the second vanishing point. Now we're moving on to the ink time lapse. And as is the tradition of this show, I'm going to let everybody take a breath during this moment, including myself. But before I do that, I'm going to point out that in about 10 seconds, there's going to be a quick jump in my progress. Another tradition of the show is calling myself out on my mistakes. There it was. The perfectionist in me was like, hey, you can't release this video because you messed up. But I think, again, part of this show is making mistakes and being okay with them and accepting that mistakes are going to happen in the process, So, sorry to keep rambling when it's breathing time. Now it's actually breathing time, starting now. So this week I decided to not insert my voice where it was unnecessary, and I just let that music keep going. If you're unsure about any of those last steps, I encourage you to check out previous episodes. Almost into awkward outro time here, in about 3, 2, 1. So there you have it. Another week gone by, another piece of art, and another awkward outro time. Thanks again for joining me this week. Thanks for sticking it out to the end. I had a really fun time changing a piece of trash wood into a piece of art. And hopefully someday, a piece of art in somebody's loving home. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll catch you on the flip-flop. That one's heavy. Peace.